So you've been out in the woods and you're working and letting the awesome maple syrup flow. So what is an 8-hour day?
Just the beginning.
Yes.
Before lunch.
Right.
It's an 8-hour day.
Right. Okay. So what's the 14-hour day in the woods like?
Well, for me, like during the pre-season, it usually starts at around 5:30 in the morning, and it's boot drying, right? Because we have one boot dryer and 3 to 4 people living in my house who all have very wet boots.
Right.
So dry and waterproof boots for an hour, and then get ready and head out to the woods. And then you're like during the pre-season, you're tapping and repairing pretty much as long as there's daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back up to the sugar house, you have a beer, you go home, you hang up your boots, and you get ready
Now,
to do it
which
again.
kind of beer is being consumed? I think that's an important question.
A lot of Central Waters.
Like the good Central Waters that's like with the maple syrup. The stuff that is so hard to get that like I can't even get a ticket to go to the thing every year. That beer.
we did have a quarter barrel this year at the open house.
You did. I was out of town for your open house. Such
Sold
a
out,
drag.
I think, in an hour.
Yeah, of course it did.
So not a lot of that on hand. But I'm partial to the mud puppy. Usually in attire as well as flavor.
Sure.
Eric is definitely a Rift guy.
Yeah, I think Dan and I take care of the Rift.
Right.
Well.
I help with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the relationship with Central Waters, we should probably, since I don't have Luke here to do all the introducing, we're going to actually do the formal introduction here. So you are listening to the 54665 podcast, and today we have some of my favorite people in the community and also fans of the podcast, which is one of my favorite things ever, in the studio. Beanese Trees, can you guys introduce yourselves? We're super glad to have you.
Well, I'm the Bee, Bree Breckel. I am a sap wrangler and co-founder of Beanese Trees.
I am Eric Winiger, the E, and I'm a woods creature. I feel most at home when I'm in the woods.
And I'm the L of Beanese Trees, Larkin, and I do all of the media and outreach for Beanese Trees, as well as a lot of tree tapping.
Larkin is the very best little sister, so this is definitely a family operation here.
There's nothing better than a family operation.
Yeah, especially when several years in, you all still get along.
Right.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Our other team members, Dan McCarran, he is at home today working, and Jeanette in Burlingame.
Jeanette and I met on a field trip in 2nd grade, so she's family.
Yeah. Super awesome. So let's talk about your product just a little bit for people that aren't aware of your amazing maple syrup. Let's talk about why it's so amazing and how the concept came about.
So our maple syrup is we harvest at our farm outside of Cashton and age for a year in empty bourbon barrels. So they're charred white oak barrels. A lot of the flavor you get in a good bourbon comes from the oak of the barrel. So those smoky, those vanilla, oak has some of the same flavor compounds as vanilla beans. Mm-hmm. So those really like rich, full-bodied flavors of the oak and the maple, the two trees together, create a really fun culinary experience, something we really like playing with, well beyond your typical maple syrup uses. So a lot of culinary use, yeah, and definitely some mixology. Larkin didn't mention that in her intro, but she is our staff mixologist.
Now, what is a mixologist exactly?
I mix maple syrup and booze together.
Yeah.
One of our favorites right now is the maple old fashioned. We've been experimenting with different cherries and stuff in it.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. And you can make it all with Wisconsin products. So you get this really authentically Wisconsin taste with it.
Yeah.
What's
that's
really
fantastic.
fun about adding the maple is that during the aging process, we're currently aging the maple syrup for over a year in the bourbon barrels. And in that process, the maple soaks into the barrel and then pulls out a lot of those unique flavors Bree was talking about, the tannins, the vanillins. There's some of the smokiness, the guayacols that come from the barrel wood. But when you're making an old-fashioned, the bourbon is really key in that, because that's where you're getting a lot of that flavor from. So when you're using the maple syrup, you can have a lot more of those flavors that people really like in there without adding just more booze or more alcohol to it.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it carries those flavors really well.
Well, I'm a huge fan, and I think the listeners don't know this, but you guys know this. And my parents are huge fans of your maple syrup. I find myself just going and having a spoonful every now and again because it's incredibly satisfying, and the flavor is so delightfully complex. It really does add just a little something to plain yogurt or anything that you're having. I mean, it totally changes the experience. So what you've been able to come up with here is genius, truly. I mean, it's totally outstanding.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and the experience is really, really key to what we do. You know, everything from the flavor experience, and then out at the farm, you know, we do some different events. And so really, you know, embracing experience is why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So tell me about how Beanese Trees came to be. Have you all always been entrepreneurs? Did you grow up around entrepreneurs? How did you get inspired to do this? How did you all find each other and come up with the idea?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, at the heart of who we are, at the roots, if you will, is it's farmers. And I think both Bree and I knew at some point we wanted to farm.
Mm-hmm. Are you both from the area?
Yeah, I graduated, Larkin and I graduated from Westby. Eric grew up in Holman, so hometown kids.
Yeah, right on.
Growing up in the hills, you know, exploring in the woods our whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, not having family farms that we were going to be able to take on, there was a lot of dreaming to begin with, of just like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if we could farm? You know, it's what we always wanted to do. But then there was also the reality of, well, if you're running a farm and you're trying to start out, you have to pay for it. Right. And I think that's where sort of the accidental entrepreneur comes in, is that, you know, going into the farm, we looked at a couple different business plans of doing different things, from hops farming, because there was a big hops shortage when we were starting the farm. And
yep, I've attended a few of those workshops myself.
Yeah, and it was really cool because, you know, with the craft brew scene in Wisconsin, as well as nationally, really growing in kind of the aughts, in the noughties, people call it. The Wisconsin Hops and Barley Co-op was forming, and so we were really looking into that angle on things, but fortunately we didn't follow any of those business plans, and ended up attending, actually it was Ramp Fest
the first in 2011.
Okay.
And that's when we learned about a chunk of maple woods that was coming up for sale.
Okay.
And so we had, you know, both done sugaring, kind of backyard sugaring, if you will. And we had actually done some together that winter at Bree's house in La Crosse when she was living there.
Yeah, one big silver maple in the backyard, and things got out of control.
Yeah.
It all began there.
Yeah, and so then it was just figuring out how to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there was a lot of people that came together to help us make it happen as well.
Sure.
So when we first started out, we were in a shared sugar house with some neighbors, and so we were able to learn a lot of just how to sugar on a larger scale than just backyard sugaring.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
And then our farm is all off-grid, and trying to learn about that. In 2013, we were up at the Midwest Renewable Energy Fair.
Mm-hmm.
We both, motorcycled there from different directions, met there, and we were packing up to leave, and my phone was ringing, and it was a friend of ours who was hanging out in the beer tent, and he's like, "Hey, get over here. I'm talking to this guy about beer and maple syrup," and he like, you've got to be part of this conversation. So we, unpack and go over and meet him.
And well, next thing you know, we're picking up empty bourbon barrels from the brewery,
Mm-hmm.
Central Waters, and bringing them back, 2 barrels in the back of our Subaru. And that's how it all kind of got started.
Yeah.
You know, we knew we wanted to do something unique with the maple syrup, to really kind of be our own and have a unique experience. And so
Sure.
we didn't necessarily plan out the bourbon barrel aged maple and for it to be, what the core of what we're doing.
Right.
But it was pretty serendipitous in the meeting of the folks at Central Waters, and then just collaborating and experimenting over the past few years and really trying to hone in both the maple syrup aging. That was certainly an experiment,
Mm-hmm.
but then also how to grow the beer alongside of it.
Right. Well, and a delightful experiment, obviously. So the results have been absolutely magnificent. How do you go from coming up with this fun experiment and getting a little bit of knowledge and working together with some of the things that you've learned in the past? How does that turn into a business model? For the listeners out there, one of the main goals that we have for this podcast is that so the people that are out putting up a garage in Soldiers Grove who are interested in more information about best practices for businesses, how do we speak to those people about, can anybody do something like this? Did you have lots of special help? Are you just totally natural, amazing entrepreneurs, superheroes?
No.
In terms of creativity and everything else, like, how did you make this happen?
So we started working with Central Waters in 2013, and we were, it worked. It was delicious. And then we had to make a decision. Is this for real?
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing this for realsies?
Mm-hmm. Were you employed elsewhere at the time?
Yes.
What were you doing at the time?
I was working at People's Food Co-op in La Crosse. I was
Okay.
Managing the deli there. So
Sure.
I was putting in, well over full-time hours there. And Eric was still in Milwaukee at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a combustion engineer for Harley Davidson, which was kind of a dream job for me. I was doing CO2 and emissions reduction and working on some of the most advanced motorcycle engines out there.
My husband knows you from your time there.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband's an engineer at S&S Cycle.
Yeah,
so,
we chatted at the night market.
Yeah.
That was really exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2015, we had our first batch that was of a on shelves, in stores, scale, aging. I quit my job that spring knowing that we wouldn't have a single bottle of maple syrup until November.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have some amazing savings account when you quit and were ready to go into the business?
We'd been saving up for a few years.
Okay.
I was working at a food co-op, so
Sure. Yep.
it wasn't a large savings account, but it was definitely many years of very frugal,
Sure.
tucking it away, free bin,
Mm-hmm.
Free bin living was
Yeah.
we were able to put something aside, and Eric was still, full-time off farm. So in 2015, I took a co-starters course.
Tell me about that just a little bit. Did that give you the full push into being an entrepreneur?
It really gave me a lot of tools. A lot of tools, a lot of resources, a lot of, you've got an idea and there's just ideas swimming around in your brain, and they're not in a really executable order. They're not organized. They're just like, I should do marketing so that people know that we exist. Yeah, that's a good idea. But not like, all right, so here's an organized path. This is how you these are the questions you should be asking yourself. And a lot of it was, what are the questions you should be asking? You didn't get any answers. You didn't get any absolute, this is it, but it provided a really useful framework. And I still reference my co-starters book.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, I know that the founder of Co-Starters, Enoch, he's a friend of mine. He listens to this podcast, so we have to make sure to give him a shout. Just because it's a fantastic program, and we're going to be offering it again in Viroqua in the summer. So I'm so glad that it was such a useful tool for you.
It really was. It really helped pull a lot of the things that were kind of ephemeral, pull that into focus. Yeah. I would definitely recommend it. And it was approachable. It was definitely, it wasn't a strict structure that I couldn't work in. It was right. I got a lot out of it.
Were you in co-starters as you were kind of winding things down at the co-op?
Yeah.
Was that okay?
Yep. So it was the course. I finished my position at the co-op in the middle of that course.
Okay.
So and also the beginning of syrup season. So it was challenging to juggle, wrapping up a managing position, jumping into the farm, setting up for syrup season. How do I businesses?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So it was a bit of a whirlwind, a lot of opportunity to go back and reference, the stuff that we went through in that. But
I think that there was a lot of there was a good transition, I feel, for both of us. Bree quit her job first to transition into the farm and the business full time. That was in 2015. And then over the next 2 years, she really took on growing the business into something that was, more than just that life-consuming hobby. And I think that it really takes, at least for me, and I think us, jumping into it and doing it to see that, well, one, you can do it, but also to figure out what you have to do to make it. Yeah. And so when I ended up leaving my full-time job in 2017, I felt that Bree had already laid out really good groundwork for me to jump in, and then, for us to work together into building it to where we are today. And it's continually just reflecting on, where you've been, what you've done, and then just using everything that you've learned to figure out where you are and where you're going. Right. And there's never, one plan that guarantees success. It's just continually looking at the information that's available, keeping your eyes open. And I think one thing that was really beneficial was just having people around, everything from friends and family that were helping out in the woods, tapping trees the first year.
Sure.
I couldn't identify a maple tree when we started,
oh.
even though I had tapped them before. So that's
awesome.
That's where we started. It was asking our friend Bjorn, is this a maple tree? But then also just other business owners and entrepreneurs in the community, not necessarily in fields that we're even in, but just people who are going through and have been through some of the same struggles and seeing them successful, and then just knowing that it is possible.
Yep. So that first year, you're tapping the trees, you're bottling things. how's it going? You know, like financially, was it a great year? Did you break even? Was it a really tough time? What does that first year look like? You know, what's the realistic view of that first year?
I think if you're making money, you're not an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's not easy. It's still not easy. But we're working and like have really tangible, this year is better than last year. And for a lot of the years we've been at this, it's been every year is a first year. You know, we went from, you know, this is the first year that we have product. And then the next year we sold out, you know, really early on. And so we had to navigate thank you stores for setting aside shelf space. We will in November be able to fill your orders, and just like building those relationships and hoping that they'll maintain that faith that they've put in you.
well, I think there's some strategy that goes into that as well, that, you know, you built those relationships, so then how can you maintain them when something happens that wasn't expected? And
Right. Well, and what does that look like in terms of quantity for your business? You know, the first year, how many 1,000 bottles did you do compared to now, for example?
Oh, gosh, the actual numbers, I don't remember. Every year is a little different because we age everything that we produce.
Yep.
And we've just through the years, we've learned that you really need to age the maple syrup for more than a year to get a lot of those complex flavors. And so we ended up holding syrup for multiple years and aging it then for multiple years while trying to figure out, how do you still pay the mortgage on the land? How do you still have enough money to live? How can you still try to make investments where you need to, so that you can become more efficient in bottling and production, take on employees because you're just burnt out trying to do everything.
Yeah. Well, and what are some of those answers? You know, how do you pay the bills, and how do you handle labor when you're holding some of your product for sale in the future? How does that work?
One thing we do is enlist my retired father.
Oh, okay. Free labor. Free labor.
But that really hits it, is having a really good team around you of people that believe in you and that can see that you're trying to do the right thing. Because I believe that when you are doing the right thing and you're actually putting forth the actions of it, people will see that, and they'll want to try to step in and try to help you fill those gaps where you have them. And I feel we were extremely fortunate for that, of having friends and family that would come in and do 16-hour shifts in the kitchen. We're at the Food Enterprise Center. Shout out to Sue Noble.
Yep, shout out.
Phenomenal. But it's somebody like Sue, someone who believed in it and believed in us and what we were trying to do, and saw how we were doing it and tried to figure out how is it going to work. And so we'd have friends and family in the kitchen for 16 hours a day. Somebody would make food. It's unbelievable when someone comes in with a crock pot at 6 p.m. and it's just like, oh,
thanks, Mom.
Oh yeah, there's eating. You know?
You're the best.
Yeah,
so,
that is really fantastic to have a support system like that. Is
because you
can't do it alone.
Yeah,
and you really know that you need the people around you to make it happen.
Right. Well, so not only have you guys been featured on Wisconsin Foodie, and the lieutenant governor has been out tapping trees, and there's been all this cool stuff that's happened. There have been numerous articles in various publications. What was your promotional style? I mean, obviously all of those things are really helpful, but I seem to remember you doing a tremendous amount of being out and about as well. What's your strategy for promotion, and what's an effective one in your opinion?
Yeah, so the out and about hasn't changed at all. I think last year we did well over 50 events, like large events.
Yeah.
And we're in local farm. We go to the Cameron Park Farmers Market every week. We come to the Viroqua Farmers Market any weekend that we're around. And just getting out and being able to meet the people and have them taste the syrup. And that's with the syrup that we make, that's almost all you have to do a lot of time.
Right.
Is just get people to taste it and then have that like one-on-one contact where you get to meet someone who's making the food that you're enjoying.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of what we're doing and what we want to do is about engaging. Mm-hmm. And so often our experience of the world is so flat. You know, we spend so much time on screens where you've got the visual and you've got maybe some audio, but what can you squeeze out of a phone is so much of our experience, where with the maple syrup, you know, you're engaging the flavor. Mm-hmm. You know, you're engaging this new sense. And we've got Ramp Fest coming up here. We really want to get people out to the woods and unplug for a little while and, you know, use your sight in a broader way, use your sound in a broader way, the taste, the smell, just really having a very full experience. And people are hungry for that, you know, and we have this space, this woods that it's really cool. We really want to share it with people. And I think that works, that resonates with people. Mm-hmm. And Larkin is, you know, great. She's, you know, taking the pictures and taking the time to engage with people and just be welcoming and be inviting. And that's kind of what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me, is the lieutenant governor actually good at tapping trees, or how is Max Love? I guess that's a better question.
We lit him on fire.
Being like 8 feet tall. How did he do? We know you're listening, Max, and we love you.
Max is great. It was one of the coldest days that we had, like, all winter. It was like 4 below when they were out there, and we've just got this little propane heater, and he snuggled up a little closer than his boots wanted to that propane heater. I'm like, oh, there's a smell.
Oh dear.
Oh, take 2 steps to your left quickly.
It was great to have them out just to, you know, get that experience of another aspect of farming in Wisconsin, and to have discussions about rural economic development and what are the things that really helped us get through some of those hard times in the beginning, and what are the tools that we see could help other people start businesses, start food-based, farm-based, value-adding businesses. Mm-hmm. The Secretary of Agriculture, DATCP, Brad Papp, was also out. Yep. And so it was great having those conversations with him as well, because I think there's a lot of people in the community that are hungry for trying to do something a little bit different, to really start businesses that work more in the community and with the people in the community and the resources that we have. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so,
what are some of the things in an ideal world that should be present for people looking to start those businesses?
Well, I think one thing is, and we have it here, and we're really lucky, and that's the Food Enterprise Center, and some of the resources that the Vernon Economic Development Association and the Chamber have to offer. Sure. The Food Enterprise Center, you know, I don't know how many people are employed in that building now, but I believe it's more than when NCR left. Mm-hmm. And it's being able to talk to people who've been through some of the same problems. And I think part of it is just seeing people in the community that are running, you know, respectable, ethical, successful businesses, just to see that you can do it.
Right.
You know, you can do well by doing good. Mm-hmm. And you can see how that sort of resonates throughout the community, and more people then want to be a part of it. And so I think it's just having that entrepreneur ecosystem where everybody is, you know, working together to try to, you know, keep furthering what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I've asked almost all of my questions. Is there anything else? I think we should talk about when Ramp Fest is, so that the listeners, let's talk about Ramp Fest in general. What is Ramp Fest and when is it happening?
Ramp Fest is on Saturday the 27th We're opening the farm up for
Of April.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Last Saturday of April every year. Ramp Fest is a celebration of spring. It is, we've got workshops, we've got sustainable ramp harvest. Bjorn's doing some ramp harvest courses, cooking, preserving, but also having a lot of outdoor education. So we've got foresters out, we've got birders, mycologists, just really like, hey, we survived the syrup season, spring is here, like let's do this. Things are coming up. Life persists.
Yeah.
So let's go camping.
And is Ramp Fest kid friendly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've got a kids corner, so kids activities. We've got, stuff if you want to come out for the workshops. Awesome. If you want to come out just for, a ramp grilled cheese and some outdoor games, spring ephemeral hike, lots of stuff for all levels of engagement.
Yeah, it's something that we try and have a little something for everyone there. So if you want to learn and take workshops and camp and overdose on the B&E's experience, you can have us all weekend long.
Well, and ramps are amazing. And the listeners can't see this beautiful bunch of ramps that I am lucky enough to get. It's really great that Luke's not here, because then Caleb and I can just share all of these and enjoy our own ramp grilled cheese. Or my personal favorite, ramps with morels. It's a little early for the morel, but yes.
And you can get ramps, morels, and then if it's during trout season, that's always my favorite.
Oh, it's so amazing. Yeah. So do you just have an unbelievable quantity of ramps on the property, and that's how this festival started?
Yeah, this is definitely a Bjorn original. So
there's so many Bjorn originals.
He's
There's
an
only
original
one.
guy.
We better make sure he's listening to this podcast.
Yeah, Bjorn's great. But yeah, we've got lots of ramps. Teaching sustainable harvest is really core to what Ramp Fest is, because you see this beautiful green hillside, but you might not realize it takes 7 to 10 years for that plant to set seed. And then only about 10% of the seed germinates in the wild. So a lot of areas, they're getting lost. And so starting with sustainable harvest, keeping in mind, only a small amount of what's there should be harvested, and then how to preserve it, how to use it. It's a very strong flavor, very useful in a lot of different cooking. And then just kind of broadening from sustainable ramp harvest to sustainable forest to sustainable watershed to sustainable ecosystem.
Yeah. One thing we're hoping with Ramp Fest is it's sort of a backdoor to conservation,
right?
Through experience and appreciation for the experiences that people can have out in the woods and out in the beautiful environment that we have here.
Yeah, I think it sounds awesome. I think I'm going this year and bringing the kiddos.
Awesome.
So one final question before we end here. What's next for B&E's Trees? What's the 5-year plan?
So I think the 5-year plan is a lot of it's doing what we're doing now. We definitely plan on still making the best maple syrup in Wisconsin and bourbon barrel aging it and reaching all of the markets and the people that we've been reaching. But then we do want to grow the experiential side of B&E's Trees. So if we can have people out there every weekend doing events on the farm, coming out and just being able to really engage, experience a beautiful piece of land that we have and that we can share with people, and be able to kind of learn and grow and explore through that.
Yeah, I think that's simply lovely. The agritourism thing, there's nothing like it, and people want those experiences. So I think what you're doing is really important and really powerful. So thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to buy my next case of B&E's amazing maple syrup.
All right, thank you, Nora.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's been fun.
Bye-bye.